Zero carbon emissions by 2050. That should be the target for the UK, according to the Committee on Climate Change. And if we meet that aim and others follow us, there's a 50-50 chance that as a planet we can keep below a 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature rise by the end of the century. So what will be the cost to the economy and business of this new, more ambitious target? Well, Simon Howard is Chief Executive of the UK Sustainable Investment and Finance Association, and Paul Dickinson is the Executive Chairman of CDP, which used to be called the Carbon Disclosure Project. Good afternoon to you both, gentlemen. Simon, let me start with you. I mean, this target effectively means eliminating all fossil fuels.
It means eliminating the vast majority of them and offsetting those last few emissions left, or we hope the last few emissions left, by 2050. It's a significant and very welcome development. We fully support it. We are waiting for the government to accept it. As of now, they haven't. They're considering it.
Does that mean an end to manufacturing in the country, basically?
No, it means businesses, industries of all kinds now need to restructure and to consider climate change at the very heart of their investment and their strategy. They need to minimise energy consumption. They need to minimise consumption of all consumables, frankly. This has got to be on the board agenda, the chair and the chief exec's agenda for every kind of company. The world is changing in order to prevent dramatic change. Businesses must respond.
Well, now, you've just published, I mean, obviously you represent a lot of fund managers in the city. You've just published some research suggesting that while most fund managers agree and are aligned with those targets, they're not necessarily coming down on businesses that fail to establish momentum.
Yes, we surveyed 39 fund managers and their attitudes towards the big fossil fuel companies. Over 80% of the fund managers are saying already these companies are only attractive investments if they align with 1.5 degrees climate world. So the oil companies are already under pressure from the fund managers to change. The only slight disappointment in the report is the fund managers are not yet setting firm target deadlines. Only 7 of the fund managers have thus far set deadlines for when the integrated oil companies have to act. So we'd like to see more of them.
Yeah, why do you think they're not?
It's new. We've probably never faced anything quite like this on this scale, a substantial key industry having to change against the clock. So it is new, but what we want to see, we want to celebrate the fact engagement is happening. Overwhelmingly, the fund managers are doing it, just needs to move a bit faster, and today's announcement confirms that.
Well, Paul, what do you think? I mean, should companies, do they need a carrot to encourage them or a stick to give them a prod?
Well, it's just reality, basically. Climate change is something that the world has become very aware of. This is actually a great day. This report from the Climate Change Committee sets out very clearly what the goals are. I think there are very high hopes and expectations that this government and subsequent governments will adopt it. And that means business has certainty and can invest in providing the products and services that will keep us under 1.5 degrees.
Is this going to come at a cost to GDP growth, in your view, or is it going to come at a cost to company earnings?
I would say quite the reverse, in my opinion. The Committee on Climate Change says that there's a marginal impact on GDP over the period, but it could be quite the reverse. Britain has a history of pioneering new products and services, and we are hereby given an opportunity to again lead the world. And it's not as if we haven't got, 300 billion a year going into renewable energy. We do. At CDP, we have 7,000 companies reporting through us, and they talk about great changes, renewable energy, electric vehicles. I mean, what about food? We're now seeing multi-billion-dollar flotations of companies with plant-based alternatives to meat that taste better.
Are we targeting the right companies necessarily, Simon? I mean, you mentioned the oil companies there, but I mean, the aircraft and aviation sector is often punished. But I mean, global shipping is one of the biggest contributors.
Every sector, every industry has to play a part in this. Everybody is using energy. It should be renewable. You should be monitoring what you're emitting and your pollutions, and the polluter should pay. This is economy-wide. In answer to your question of the costs, Climate Change Committee says it's 1 to 2% of GDP a year. It strikes us that is the world's biggest, best and cheapest insurance policy. If we pay that premium, our planet stays broadly the same. If we don't, our grandchildren inherit heat waves, forest fires, disease, refugees, starvation. It's a no-brainer.
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, Mark Carney made a speech the other day where he highlighted growing insurance costs due to climate change. One of the other things he said, interestingly, was that some companies could fail to exist if they fail to adapt. You've got concerns about the oil companies in that respect.
Yes, I think the oil companies, they're in a very difficult place. The incumbent culture is pump oil, burn it. It's got to change. So there's a process of cultural change necessary. They are in a difficult place. Some of the oil companies, just as some of the coal companies, they're going to fail. They're going to cease to exist. That is why pension funds and insurance companies should be considering this issue now.
All right, Simon Howard, Paul Dickinson, appreciate your time, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.